Alright, here's a little demo on curves in Photoshop. Curves is a really versatile adjustment tool, and we'll normally accomplish this by making some adjustment layers. So we've got a photo that we want to adjust. This is kind of a nice high contrast photo in many ways, but I'm thinking I'd like to get a little more detail in these shadowed areas. And to do this, we'll do an adjustment layer. I've got my layers palette, and I'll go down in the layers palette to the bottom and hit this little icon, this little split circle icon. That gives us an adjustment layer, and we can choose from a whole set of adjustments here. Today we're going to work with curves. And when I get an adjustment layer going for curves, I get this curves adjustment dialog box. Now this has a histogram in it. A histogram shows us, it's kind of a population report from light to dark, or dark to light in the image, and it shows us of these darker shadows we have this many. These sort of mid-dark shadows we have quite a few. Midtones not so much, highlights not so much. We have and we can see by getting this pointed finger icon here in the adjustments dialog box, I can mouse over different areas, and you'll notice on that histogram in the curves dialog box it shows me where this area that I'm mousing over is in terms of light and dark. Here on the columns, that's where all this spike of information is. Oh, along about this, what is it, 65-70% gray there. And if I mouse over right next to it in that highlight area, I'm back in the 15-20% light. And then here we're right up to the top of the spectrum at almost zero. So that lets us know where things are. Now this diagonal line, that's our curve. And the grayscale at the bottom, that's the light and dark that we start out with. The grayscale at the side, that's what we're going to change it to. So if I want to lighten up this area in the columns, I'll grab this part of the curve and move that up, and those columns get lighter. Of course, everything else gets lighter with it. Now the other thing to consider in dealing with curves is if we make part of this curve more steep, whether we're changing it lighter or darker, if we make it more steep, we're adding more contrast and detail to those areas. And you can see that's exactly what I've done with the bricks. And you can look on the curve and see that's the area where the bricks are, and I've made that part of the curve more steep. I've added more contrast, and here in our layers palette we can do a before and after. We can choose to view or not view that adjustment layer. Now I'll go back and get my adjustment. Maybe. Let's see, where did that go? There it is. It's hiding behind there. I'll go back and get my adjustment, and if I wanted to bring these lighter areas back down, what I could do is grab that part of the curve that's been elevated and made lighter, and I'll move that more toward where we started. And so these lighter areas, I've gotten back to our starting point on that because they were light enough anyway. Oops. There we go. But what have I done with this area in the middle? I've kind of flattened that out, so we've got less contrast there. Let's see where that area is. See what's being affected. Oops. I'll mouse over these mid to dark blues in the sky, and that's exactly what's going on. So those areas are going to look a little bit more gray. When I flatten out that curve, those areas start to look gray. And sure enough, they're a little bit more gray than before. Now I could go in here and put a blending mode on this layer rather than just the normal mode. I could say, hey Photoshop, only blend this for luminosity. In other words, only blend this layer for the light and dark. Don't change out the color so much. Hey, that's not bad. That brings our blue back to the sky. We've still got contrast and detail in the bricks. We'll do before and after. Now, if I wanted to alter the color in the bricks, which wasn't a bad effect, I could go back to the normal blending mode, and those bricks get kind of more red. So that's my trade-out. I can choose more red in the bricks at the expense of graying out the sky a little bit, or I can preserve that color by blending only for luminosity. But I don't get quite that red quality in the bricks. So you've got to decide, which parts of which aspects of that might be more important sometimes. So with curves, we do an adjustment layer. When we get the curves adjustment dialog box, the histogram is a population report. It represents how much of this image is at a certain level of light or dark. How much of this image is 50% gray? How much is 75% gray? And then we can deal with how to adjust the curve. The pointing finger lets us mouse over an area and find out where it is on that diagonal that we have in the curves adjustment dialog box originally. And then we can plot a point on here. If we move the curve up, we're lightening that part of the image. If we move the curve down, we're darkening that part of the image. If we make the curve more steep, we add more contrast and detail to that part of the image. If we make the curve more flat, we're decreasing contrast and detail in that part of the image, and if we make it totally flat, we're making that part of the image go kind of a neutral gray. So those are the basic ins and outs of the curve dialog box, and we'll continue with some more specialized adjustments in the next video.